Good morning everyone, it's Pierre speaking. It's the 12th of April 2016. Time is about 7:15 GMT time when I made this video clip. Let's start off with the Euro Index daily chart. Why am I looking at the daily chart? Last week guys, we closed 54 pips lower than the opening. So if we drop down to the 4 hour, we can see we closed lower than the opening. So price was trending down for that week. But the 4 hour and the daily 54.55 still stacked to go long, so we need to honor it. So I can't flip the 4 hour the previous week, so then we need to go to the daily. If we do that, we need to flip the previous month now from the low to the high we made. Then we've got a zone starting at 99.05 coming down to 98.13. That will be the area where we need to look for longs. Saying that, price currently stuck at 122. That is where we have the 4 hour 55 EMA. Okay, so price is currently for me in no man's land. I will prefer if price can get back to this level, 99.57, 99.37. That is where we have the monthly main pivot point. We have a 55 EMA there and the 4 hour 200 EMA. Plus, if you add a 38.2 FIP, then that comes into that level as well. If you look to the left of the chart, previous support resistance, so that in my book is multiple reasons. So that will be a key support area this week, 99.57, 99.37, where we need to look for those longs. Notice it's before the potential trading zone, but that is the roadblock for us at the 38.2 FIP. Possible counter trades, I will only relook to counter short at 100.90. If we quickly drop to the 4 hour and we make it bigger, then 190 and 101.28 where those pivot points are. This week's weekly first pivot point coming in at 183, also hold hands with 190, which was the previous month's high area. Now if you look at the basket pairs, Euro US dollar, Euro JPY, Euro pound, then this one is very much correlated with the Euro index. Here we have the same situation. Last week we closed only 10 pips higher on the 4 hour chart, so it was very flat. We can't flip the 4 hour chart. The 4 hour tells us too long, daily tells us too long, so then we prefer to do the daily chart, flip the daily chart. If we do that, we flip from the bottom to the top, then we've got a zone starting at 12.12 coming down to 09.80 it looks like. Now here too guys, for me price is highly overbought. We have MACD divergence showing up where MACD is trending down, price is trending up, so there must be a correction on the way. I will prefer if price can get back to this level, like the Euro index. If we add a 38.2 FIP, then that comes in at 12.12. In the same area we have a 4 hour 200 EMA. The monthly main pivot point is there. We've got a psychological level there. The daily 55 is there, and if we look to the left of the chart, previous support resistance. So once again, multiple reasons. So that will be my area this week to look for those trades going with the trends. Possible counter trades 14.52, and if we drop to the 4 hour to see the weekly pivot points, then 14.63 as well will be my areas where I will relook to take possible counter trades. But remember, it's always more risky to take those counter trades. It can bite you if you don't know what you're doing, so please wait for those confirmation. Euro JPY 4 hour chart, last week we had a big fat drop of 376. We closed lower than the opening price, so if we honor it, we stick to the 4 hour, we flip from the high to the low, then we have a zone at 124.95 coming up to 126.15. Price currently busy pulling back up. Add a 38.2 FIP, then that comes in also at the weekly main pivot point at 124.47. So I will be keeping my eyes on 124.47 and 124.78 where the 55 is, while the 200 holds at 125.77. My buyers will be too short. So anything from 124.47 going up to 125.77. Once price gets into this area here, look for those signs for shorts where price gets exhausted, where we have roadblocks in the form of the weekly pivot point, the 55, where there's candle formation, that type of thing. Wait for a confirmation on the smaller time frames before you take the trade. Possible counter trades, I will only look at 121.58 once we get down there to look for possible counter trades. If you look at the euro pound 4-hour chart, last week we closed 60 pips higher than the opening. The 4-hour tells us too long, the daily tells us too long, so if we honor it, we flip from the bottom to the top. Then we've got a zone this week starting at 80.38, coming down to 7.998. Price currently in the potential trading zone at the 55 EMA. We're hitting the 75% FIP at 7.998. It's also a psychological level of 8.000. And if we look to the left of the chart, we had a bit of previous support resistance there. MACD is not too low, but stochastic is oversold. So while 7.8, now I'm talking nonsense, 7.981 is holding, which is the weekly pivot point, my buyers will be to look for longs on this pairs. Counter trades on this, I will only look once price gets to 81.58 for possible counter trades. If you look at the pound US dollar daily chart, this one is interesting, guys. Last week we are mixed on the 4-hour, we closed 97 pips lower. The main trend is down if you look at the daily, and last week Tuesday I showed you a triangle. Later in the week the triangle broke to the downside, price came down, we touched the monthly pivot point, we burned there. Look how we touch it and pull back. Now price is busy pulling back, we're getting back to this trend line that's broken, and in that area we have a monthly main pivot point plus the 55 EMA plus that trend line, and if you look to the left of the chart, previous support resistance. So this can be a possible M2 short that can set up from this area. Interesting thing here, if we go to the 4-hour chart and we flip the 4-hour chart from the high of last week to the low we made, then price is currently on the other side of the 75. This morning when I did my write up, we were underneath 4245. But look at this, the trend line, the weekly pivot point, the psychological level, last week's high, all in that area where we broke that triangle. So that's a huge resistance for this pair, so keep your eye on that level. Let me just get rid of the FIP here. Let's call that psychological level here 4,300 for possible shorts on this pair. If you look at the pound JPY 4-hour chart, last week we had a fat drop, 585 pips lower than the opening price. So if we honor it, we flip previous week from the high to the low, then we've got a zone 155.62 going up to 157.60. Price currently busy pulling back up. Possible roadblock, we have the 34 EMA there at a weekly pivot point at 154.75, so keep your eyes on that. I will prefer if we can get a pullback to 155.81 where we have that 50% FIP area and also the 55 EMA. If you look to the left of the chart, previous support resistance, so keep your eyes on those levels. Aussie US dollar daily chart. Sorry guys, I think there's a frog in my throat here. Quickly have a look here. 4-hour chart, mixed daily tells us to go long. That's why I flip the daily chart, because we all mixed up on the 4-hour chart. If we honor that, we flip previous week from the bottom to the top, then we've got a zone starting at 7.415 coming down to 7.261. If we add a 58.2 FIP, then that comes in at 7.490. A hell of a lot happening there, guys. We have a monthly main pivot point there, we have the 200 EMA there, it's a psychological level. If you look to the left of the chart, previous support resistance. So for this week I will be keeping my eyes on that level for support level. Saying that, if we look to the left of the chart, then it looks like we might be ranging between the high of 77.23 and 7.490. You can see for the last month we're going sideways between these two levels. So once price gets to these levels, go to the smaller time frames, check out your MACD divergence, stochastic if it's overbought, oversold, and look for confirmation for possible trades at that levels. Aussie JPY 4-hour chart. Last week we closed 372 pips lower than the opening price, so if we honor it, we flip from the high to the low. Then we've got a zone 83.24 going up to 84.51. In the zone we've got a 55 at 83.22. We also have a mother-in-law at 83.87. Price currently pulling back up. Possible roadblock at 82.74, which is the weekly main pivot point. I would prefer if we can get at to 83.23. While this 200 EMA holds, my buyers will look to go short on this pair. Possible counter trades will only touch it when 79.84 comes into play again. US dollar JPY 4-hour chart. Big drop last week. We've closed 333 pips lower than the opening. So if we honor it, the 4-hour tells us to short, daily tells us to short. If we honor it, we flip previous week from the high to the low. Then we've got a zone starting at 109.66 going up to 110.66. Currently it looks like price is making a double bottom at 107.67. MACD is trending up, price going sideways, so we've got MACD divergence, stochastic oversold, so there must be a pullback on the cards for this pair. Possible areas 109.23 where we have the weekly main pivot point. If we look to the left of the chart, we also have previous support resistance there. I will prefer if we can get into the zone to 109.81 where I will relook to short. Possible counter trades. We'll only look for counter trades rather, not counter shorts. Counter trades from 106.76. US dollar CAT. 4-hour tells us to short, daily tells us to short. Last week we closed 55 pips lower. We honor it, we flip from the high to the low. Then we've got a zone starting at 3051 going up to 3154. I want pullback at least to 3052. That is where we have a weekly main pivot point. The 55 EMA is waiting there. If you look to the left of the chart, previous support resistance. Interesting area now. We are at a weekly support, one pivot at 2885. MACD is starting to turn over. Stochastic is oversold. So there's a possible correction on this pair. Be careful. We might break to the downside. Next level, if we do break 2885, will be 2788, where I will relook to counter trade this pair. US dollar index 4-hour chart. Last week we closed 40 pips lower. 4-hour tells us to short, daily tells us to short. So if we flip from the high to the low, we've got a zone starting at 94.57 going up to 94.69. Where I will relook to short. In the zone we have a 54 EMA at the weekly main pivot point. The 55 is at 94.55 where I will relook as well. Previous support resistance in the zone, so keep your eyes on that too. Currently we burned already fingers this week at the weekly support pivot point. Price is coming back to that level at 93.74. Stochastic is oversold, so I will be keeping my eyes on 93.74, 93.34 for possible counter trades. That's me for the week, guys. If you've got any questions or if you just want to hang out or post your trades, please pop in at the forum. It's the main place for us where we hang out in the week. And yeah, if you've got any questions, please ask it in PS Corner, because sometimes I get guys asking all over the place and then your questions get lost. It's not that I don't want to answer it, it's just I don't see it, because most of my time I spent in PS Corner. Have an awesome week. Speak to you guys later. Cheers.